this is your host, Julia Napini. I am a clinical and forensic social worker who owns a counseling practice and a consulting business. In this show, we discuss the challenges of being successful in business while maintaining your integrity and staying true to yourself. Join me while I interview other professionals and share insights from life and experience. Let's talk about RingRx, our latest sponsor. RingRx is a high-quality, HIPAA-compliant telephone, text, and fax communications platform. They provide seamless, cost-effective communications for behavioral therapists, medical practices, hospitals, and other healthcare providers. RingRx is designed for modern healthcare environments. They offer customizable features like a phone app, automated patient outreach, voicemail, after-hours call routing, and top-quality desk phones. Try RingRx for free today at ringrx.com. And if you sign up using the code CLIMB, you'll get 15% off your monthly bill forever. Conditions apply. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Compassionate Climb podcast. In my quest to always keep things exciting and relevant, we have a guest with us today that is going to talk about some things that we have yet to talk about on the show that are very interesting and I think will intrigue you all. We're going to talk about selecting or choosing to become a nonprofit as opposed to some of the other business entities that you can be, and continuing your education beyond your counseling degree and licensure. So, Sara Rodrigues, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You know, I felt it when we first logged in, and so this is going to be good. I love your energy. So introduce yourself to everyone. Tell us some of your career background and what it is that you do.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm Sara Rodrigues.
What it is that you don't do.
What don't I do? That's sometimes the better question. I have a hard time answering that question. So I'm Sara Rodrigues. I run.
I'm sorry about the mispronunciation. I should have checked that before.
Don't worry about it. I jokingly tell everybody that I should have kept my maiden name, which was D'Souza, which in this community is kind of hard to mess up. But if you leave this community, believe me, it gets butchered anyway. But it's not a big deal. So I'm Sara. I run Balanced Learning Center here in Fall River. So what we do here at the center is we are a collaborative, integrative practice that combines mental health work, speech language, occupational therapy, a whole host of group services, in addition to some family parent coaching, LGBT specific supports, educational advocacy and coaching. And I believe that's it. I think that's all we do at the center. So for now. So at the center, we run a bunch of school-based programs. So we provide school-based counseling services at specific schools, including some telehealth programs at specific schools, in addition to a collaboration with Highland Pediatrics here in the city. So we provide some care coordination in addition to office-based counseling and telehealth for them as well. And we also are the fiscal sponsors for the Fall River Pride Committee, because our whole idea is that if we are supporting one part of a human being, then we need to be able to support all parts of the human being in the best way that we can. So that sort of just lined up with what our mission was, and that made sense. Mm-hmm. And our focus has always really been on the neurodiversity affirming practice piece of this work, which is a piece that really doesn't get highlighted enough. But we service, all people from all different walks of life with all different sorts of needs, because our clinicians have expertise in all different areas. So we really tailor to kids and families. But again, we work with all sorts of individuals. That's what we do at the center. But then I teach and I serve our community, and I think that's it. So, I'm writing a book. There's that too.
What's the topic of the book?
So it's actually an offshoot of my dissertation. So my dissertation was a project that was based on neurodiversity affirming care. Mm-hmm. And so unfortunately, a lot of times when your child is first identified as autistic or some other neurodivergent profile, what happens is you're handed a prescription for 40 hours of compliance-based therapies and you're sent on your way. and there's really no understanding of what comes next, right? There's no understanding of what this means for your kid. Where's there a community? How do we find supports? How do you change your own parenting styles, right? How do you throw out what you thought you knew as a parent? And frankly, that's really what you have to do anytime you parent a kid. You throw out all the things you thought you knew, because in reality, we know nothing, right? Because you've never parented this particular child before.
Right.
So it's it's actually called Read This First, and it's meant to be a neurodiversity affirming guide for families, but as well as practitioners, because we don't get enough information on how to work with these kids and young adults as they come through our doors. So it's meant to be a neurodiversity affirming guide.
That's incredible. So there's
So we're having a lot of fun.
passion behind this for you, and with all the things that you do, so working in the same community, being in a similar profession and similar training, I can understand how opportunities present themselves and we have the skill set for it, or it's very passion driven, or we see a need and there's a particular area that should have some more focus, and so we go for it. How did this evolution happen for you, from this decision to start the center and then everything that has come since?
Well, so I spent most of my career working in acute care services. So I worked in residentials, I worked in CBAT programs, I've worked in higher levels of care. So in-home therapy type models before in-home therapy was a thing. I was at the onset of the whole Children's Behavioral Health Initiative, at the CSA programs when they first rolled out. So I was there. And that was really where I spent a bulk of my career. And then I had kids. And my first child is 15 and he is allegedly neurotypical. And he's he's that kid that we used to call the trapper baby. So he was that kid that you had the baby, right? And you looked around at everyone else and just said, this is so easy. Like, what's wrong with people? Parenting, this is so simple, right? I must be either the best parent in the world or nobody else has it together.
Yep.
And then we had our second and we were like, oh, this is actually what people were talking about, right? So okay, now it makes sense. So our second one is now 12, but he was pretty much typically developing up until he was about 13 months old, at which point he had surgery, and then a whole host of complications came from that. And he is now identified autistic. He has a childhood apraxia of speech, which is a neurological speech condition that you actually often see as an acquired piece in older people who have had strokes, where they can form they know the words they want to say, but physically cannot form the words. So there's a disconnect between what the brain is doing and what the mouth is doing. So oral speech is a challenge, but they have the words. They know what to say. They just can't physically say it.
Okay.
It'll also have some difficulties with motor movements, things like that. So later on, he also had they also threw in an ADHD diagnosis for good measure. So it's like, let's just throw it all at him, right? Let's just have some. So we spent the good portion of his first 3-4 years of his life just driving to and from therapy appointments. And we were on the Cape. We were in Connecticut at a specialty speech office. We were at music therapy offices. We were in Boston a couple of times a week. We were in Newton. You name it, we were there. We drove all over the southern New England area getting services for this kid. And when we were sort of on the other side of that, we had thought, wouldn't it be nice if there were somewhere local where families could come in and get at least some of what they needed under one roof? Because the overwhelming theme was, even though you were in an office setting and clearly there were other people on the same journey with you, it was so isolating. The experience is just, you're by yourself. There's nobody else that kind of gets what you're dealing with there, right? And so there's so many pieces of access and just community that aren't there for families like ours. So we decided to create it. In the meantime, I had to quit my full-time job because we couldn't manage to keep up with all of the things that he needed while both of us working 40 hours a week. And so I had more flexibility in that I could work privately because of my licensure level. And so we decided that I would do that. And I just built my schedule around his needs. And that's how this all sort of came to be. And then it steamrolled from there. And here we are.
So that was the starting point, and that really speaks to that drive behind and that mission behind so much of what you do. You're really trying to prevent other parents from feeling a lot of what you did and kind of that running around and being able to provide a lot of that in one place from a team that's fully informed and affirming.
Right.
So how did the team
grow?
So help us understand let's start off with the business entity first. So what led you to make the decision that this was going to be a nonprofit?
So one of the things that we recognized was that very early on in our own process, our own personal process, is that having a kid with additional needs is expensive. And so there are very few options that help support families like ours. And I mean, I very clearly remember getting a speech evaluation done for him, and the insurance covered a bulk of the speech eval, but then the speech therapist had put in, it was a 2-line recommendations, 2 lines of recommendations, and they charged us $2,500 for those 2 lines of recommendations. And I remember thinking to myself, this isn't fair. There's nothing about this that's right or ethical. And how do we then support families in making this happen? And so we were thinking, how can we access funding that would support families in being able to access more, right? And so that's how this all came to be. So we decided to go the nonprofit route as a way that we could access additional funding that could really prevent families from spending $38,000 like we did in that very first year of services for their child, because most families don't have access to that. So we wanted to be able to do that in a way that made services more accessible for kids and families.
Oh, and I'm sure that is something that has been greatly appreciated, but I'm assuming it has its own set of challenges. So for someone who isn't familiar, can you speak to what that process looks like as opposed to maybe going a different route and being for profit?
So when we started the process, we were very fortunate that we were able to connect with Boston College actually has an entrepreneurship clinic, and we were able to connect with them to help guide us through this process. And I am so thankful that we were able to do that, because it, in the long run, it saved us so much money from being able to pay lawyers to go through this whole process. It was really helpful to be able to do that. But even just having the guidance in how to set this up correctly, that was invaluable. So they were with us through every step of the journey. They actually did a majority of the work for us. But it took 3 years from the point that we applied to the time that we actually got our 501c3 status. So 3 years of this never-ending work to make this happen. So it can be a very lengthy process. It can be a very daunting process, and it can be a difficult process. So I can tell you that it can be a challenge, because when you set up a nonprofit organization, you also have to have a board of directors. And in having that board of directors, that means most of the decisions that you make for your entity has to go through your board. And so if you're like me, you want to just sort of make decisions and let's just go, but you have a board that you have to respond to. And luckily, our group is a very supportive group, and we have ensured that we have folks that are also people that benefit from the work. So not direct clients, but people that would have benefited from this work. So we ensured that we had disabled folks, autistic folks on our board that can help guide that decision-making process for us. So that way, everything we do is through that lens. So it's definitely a challenging process, but I think in the long run, it's been worth it.
Oh, that's great to hear. And especially with that timeline, it's so helpful to hear you on the other side of it and reflecting back that it was worthwhile to do so. So the growth of the center. So tell us when you opened, what year, and then kind of what that growth has looked like to get where you are today.
So it's kind of a funky timeline. So I started working privately. It's like, well, it's complicated, right? So I started working privately in 2013. But
Mhm.
then by 2016, no, by 2015,
Mhm.
we added our first speech language pathologist. We weren't a nonprofit yet. We hadn't even started that process. We were just working collaboratively under this sort of umbrella of a name, Balanced Learning Center. It just seemed like a good idea. We were just going for it.
Mhm.
And then we added a second speech therapist to work with us again collaboratively, and an occupational therapist. 2016, we started providing more groups. That's when we started taking our first interns. So I've always had interns at every setting I've been in, but I had a hiatus from when I started working privately up until this point because I really didn't have the capacity to do that.
Sure.
So 2016, we started taking on interns and we started offering more groups. We were able to do that because we had interns running them or co-facilitating them with our speech
Yeah.
language and our OTs. And we ran wacky things like we did executive functioning escape rooms, and we did yoga, and we did a whole thing on um, oh my gosh, they were like detectives and they were going through the building and they were trying to solve a mystery. They were doing all kinds of wacky things, right? It was all geared towards connection and community building while they were working on executive functioning skills. And so they were
Wow.
having a blast.
Yeah.
I think our landlords were like, what on earth are you people doing
Oh
right
my
now? Like,
goodness. And then hopefully they got accustomed to it.
they did. And they were just like, oh, those are just Sarah's kids. Just, they're fine. Everything's fine. No big deal.
Yeah.
We did board game clubs and science clubs and all kinds of things, with always with the premise of our kids need to find community and they need to be able to build those friendship skills and those relationships with other people. And so
Mhm.
it was all through play and these wacky things that they were doing, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So we moved out of our first building in 2018 because we had outgrown the space. Then we moved into a space on Current Road, which was great.
Mhm.
But we grew out of that space pretty quickly and we moved
Wow.
into our current space on Rock Street. But to be honest, within about 6 months, we grew out of that space too. So we
So a lot of the growth was unanticipated.
very unanticipated. During COVID, I know a lot of folks were really struggling to kind of keep things going. But what we found, because we did offer remote placements for students,
Mhm.
and if done well, you can actually get some really good work done. We did remote groups during COVID. We did all kinds of things.
Yeah.
We made take home kits for families to connect with their kids, give them talking points with their kids so we can actually have these relationship building activities with them. So we did all of these things. My living room for a long time was Grand Central Station, and I remember my kids going, no more, we can't make any more boxes, mom, like we just can't.
Mhm.
We had partnered with the Family Resource Center in Fall River to get them out to families. So they
Mhm.
were these social emotional learning kits that would go out to families every single week that we just created. And they lined my living room for a good 6 months. And it's just what we did. So we had all of these
Mhm.
interns, and then the interns turned into staff after they graduated. And
Mhm.
here we are, 17 staff later, and we're doing fun stuff.
So you are clearly a visionary. You get these ideas and you just run with it and you're incredibly creative.
And then my husband goes, oh no, what are we
We
doing
got
now?
another one.
Oh
That's
no.
incredible. Well, clearly you've also found like-minded people because it really
Yes.
does take a village and a team, and you speak very highly of them. Clearly it's very collaborative.
Absolutely. We are deeply connected to the people that
Mhm.
we are working with in the community. Like, I can't say
Mhm.
enough about the Family Resource Center
Mhm.
and, Fall River Recreation. We're sharing their building, and United Neighbors. Like, we do all of that work with them. And,
Yeah.
we refer out to other counseling agencies all the time. So, Compassionate Counseling is on our referral list. We
Mhm.
refer out to constantly.
Yeah.
So, these are for Optimal Wellness. Like, these are folks that we know are doing good work in the community, and
Mhm.
so we rely on them to be able to say, hey, we we can't help this family,
Sure.
because the reality is none of us can help everyone. And so we
Mhm.
need to be able to have these relationships to be able to say, I can't help you, but you know what? This person can. And we do a warm handoff, right? Call
Yeah.
Julia over here. Call
Mhm.
Allison over here. This person's going
Right.
to help you. And that makes such a difference for
Mhm.
families.
I couldn't agree more. And you've obviously been doing that piece of it for a lot longer than I have. And so you've established these connections. You know who your people are, who share your vision. And we can do so much more and help so many more people and really hone in and provide the quality services to those individuals that are really our ideal clients if we know when to refer out or when
Yep.
we've reached our capacity. And so, yeah, there was no question in my mind that you were somebody that was worth connecting with and to spread the word and use this platform to get more out there as far as what you guys are doing. So, and we always focus on values here and operating from a place of integrity and with compassion and with empathy. And I'm hearing all of that authenticity, people being able to show up as their true selves,
Mm-hmm.
and be who they are, and be appreciated for that. So, you
Yes.
clearly embody all
That's
of those things.
That's what we want for our folks, right? We want you to show up as your true,
Hmm.
authentic self, because
Hmm.
that is how the best work is going to happen. That's
Yeah.
how you're going to be able to do your best work. And that's how you're going to be able to leave work and be able to do the best in your own life. Because if you're able to just be who you are, that's such a gift to both yourself and other people.
It's so true. And it's really, in my belief, our purpose in being here on earth, period, is to
Mhm.
discover what our unique gifts are and share those with the world. And it sounds like you're really eliminating a lot of those barriers potentially for certain people to be able to be their true self. And so it's incredible. So, my first question, and you and I had a conversation about this, and I feel like other people could benefit from hearing, how do you juggle it all? You get these ideas, you run with it. There's been so many iterations as time has gone on. So help the listeners understand what goes into that in order to keep it successful and balanced.
A lot of coffee. I think that's probably a lot of caffeine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Mhm.
if anybody, if the pink bean wants to send us, lots of things, we are more than happy. We're here for it.
Yeah.
We are right around the corner and all. So we, I would say the biggest thing is you need to have a really solid team. So both your own personal support network and your professional support network. And sometimes those
Mhm.
things are going to overlap.
Yeah.
I'm really lucky in that I have both. So I have a really solid personal support network. I
Mhm.
jokingly say, my husband says, "Oh God, not again," whenever I say, I have an idea. And he does. You can see him deflate a little bit and he goes, "Okay, what is it?" Because you know what? He's going to jump in and he's going to support whatever wacky
Mm.
idea I have.
Yeah.
So, it's just going to take him a second to go,
Right. He's gonna come around.
all right, let me just brace myself. It'll literally take him 30 seconds, but he just needs to brace himself for what are we doing this time? Just
Yeah.
tell me whatever it is that we're going to do. So I'm very fortunate in that sense that I've got a very good, solid support system there. But I have an incredible team of people. So for an admin team, there's about 4 of us. And
Mhm.
when I say admin team, we ebb and flow. So we all see clients, we all are in there doing the direct work as well. So it's not just, we're the admin team and we're sort of sitting in this ivory tower. I tell all the people, like, we don't have housekeepers, so we clean the office, we are organizing things, like we're handling all of that stuff ourselves. Like, this
Mhm.
is real life people. So my admin team is a solid group of other clinicians, other social workers, and they help keep all of this going at any given time. I've got folks that are
Mhm.
working on groups, right? And they're the primary point person for that stuff. I have other people that are working solely on educational advocacy. I have other folks that are working on our LGBTQ focused work. So
Mhm.
without that group of collaborators, this wouldn't work.
Mhm.
It wouldn't be possible. So I think having that solid team is the only way to keep it going.
Yeah, well, I hear that so much in the circles that I travel, and I'm obviously learning that myself. But to hear those examples and how these are dual roles for you
Hmm.
all, and there's got to be obviously a lot of trust, but I'm assuming that bringing on students and having interns, and then you can really ensure that they're the right fit before transitioning and bringing them on. Sounds like that's also been really invaluable, and you have their investment
Oh, it's
in.
been amazing. I got to tell you, it's been
Mhm.
absolutely amazing. They so they come in as an intern, and you really get to keep them for a year, sometimes two. So some
Mhm.
of the schools have a longer placement period now, as opposed to two separate placements. They're doing one longer placement. And that's actually been really nice because they've come on, we've had them for 2 solid years. And then at the end, we sort of get to make that decision together about whether or not this is going to be the right fit. We know we have the work for them because they're already doing the work. So it's not a matter of, do we have room for them here? Do we have capacity? We know we do because they're quite literally taking on that role already. So
Right.
now can we just pay them for that role?
Mhm.
Most of the time, yeah, we can. So it's been such a great move because we get to sort of trial things out, both from our perspective and from theirs. And for
Yes.
some students, they've decided, I don't want to do this work. We've had some students leave the fields completely.
Wow.
They end and they say, you know what? I don't really want to do this. This is a lot of responsibility. This isn't what I thought it was going to be. And it has nothing to do with the placement. It has
Right.
more to do with the work itself. And that's actually what your internship is supposed to be about,
Absolutely. And
right?
that's a worthwhile pursuit, even if
Yes.
it doesn't result in continuing in the fields.
Absolutely. Or they've decided, clinical really isn't the way to go. I don't
Sure.
want to do clinical work. I want to do more policy based work. And then,
Mhm.
they head off. And luckily, we've been able to connect them with some folks that have been able to give them some other experience in that
Mhm.
area. So it's been such a nice trial period to have folks come
Absolutely.
on.
Oh
We're
my goodness.
auditioning staff. That's kind of how
Absolutely.
it works.
So,
It's
in
great.
addition to this, you, not that long ago, returned to school and recently completed a DSW
I
program. How does
did.
all that fit in? What led you to make that decision? What
It
was the
just seemed
experience
like a
like?
good idea, right? It was another one of those like, I think I want to go back to school. And my husband was like, okay, we're doing this too. All right, cool. Like, here we go.
Buckle up.
Buckle up, buddy. Let's go. Um, so I had been toying with the idea for a long time. So I'm a first generation. I always say I'm a first gen kid, right? So my
Mhm.
parents are Azorean immigrants, like so many of us here in this community.
Yeah.
And in my immediate family, I was the first to go to college. I have a couple of other cousins that had gone to college as well. But education has always been at the forefront of my family. And I am an epic nerd and I love school. Love school. So um, shortly after my grandmother died, I had decided that this was something that I just wanted to do. I wanted to go back to school. I don't know what it was, but there was just a drive that I was super close to my grandmother and there was just a drive that I wanted to go and be able to do this.
Yeah.
And so on a whim, I had submitted a couple of applications and I got accepted. And I ended up choosing Simmons, honestly, because we've had a great experience intern wise with their
Mhm.
MSW students. I had gone to Rhode Island College for my MSW. At the time, they were the only accredited school in this general area. Yeah, I got my MSW in 2006. So
Okay.
Bridgewater hadn't been the only accredited state school. Let me rephrase
Got
that.
it.
Bridgewater hadn't been up and running. Their program wasn't accredited at that point yet. I don't even think it was up
Mhm.
and running. So I had really wanted to look at other options. Rick didn't
Right.
have a DSW program. Simmons was the most affordable. It was a completely online program, but it was a live program. So it wasn't an asynchronous program because I knew I
Okay.
didn't want that. So I had opted to just go to Simmons and I talked to my husband and I was like, we're gonna make this work. And he was like, all right, let's make it work. And I took all my classes after the kids went to bed. Luckily the scheduling worked out where I could take 8, 9 p.m. Courses, and that's just what we did. And so I did that and at first it was, well, maybe I'll go part time, but then I didn't want to go part time. I just wanted to do it and just get it done. So I just
Yeah.
went straight through and that was the end of it.
How long did it take you?
So it's 2 full years, but instead of having that break in the summertime, you actually take full summer courses. So it's technically like 3 academic years,
Mm-hmm.
but condensed into 2 calendar years.
I see.
Yeah.
And so, how do you see that shifting things for you now that you have this to add to the mix?
Well, part of the rationale was that number one, like I said, I love school, right? So I want to go, and I want to add to my skill set, and these are things
Sure.
that I want to do. I love teaching. I
Mhm.
genuinely love students. And the more that you get into teaching, the the better it is to have your doctorate, because the more opportunities will open up for you.
For
What's
sure.
funny is that I actually prefer to teach at the community college level and at so it's sort of like you don't really need your doctorate for that, but I do think that there's some pieces that are missing there for our folks, and if we can get more qualified people in with lots of experience and higher skill sets, then we're going to really boost that caliber of education for these folks going into community colleges, because I think that's a great option for so many people.
Yes.
So teaching was really one of the reasons why I wanted to do that. The other
Hmm.
piece is again, I'm a nonprofit leader, right? And so having the doctorate behind my name really opens up that door to more opportunities for the center. So when you talk about values, I come from a
Hmm.
legacy mindset. I'm
Yeah.
always looking at what's going to happen when I'm not here, right? Somebody's got to take this on, and I want to make sure that this is set up in the best way possible. And I want to open up as many doors as I possibly can. And if getting the doctorate helps open up some of those doors, then great. Then that's what we're going to do. And if I have the opportunity to do it, then I'm here for it. Let's go. So that was kind of my twofold idea.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing that. Congratulations on the completion of the program. It
Thanks.
sounds like you really needed to put nose to the grindstone, and that's a lot with parenting, running a
Mhm.
business, all the things that that business entails. And then at the end of the day, when we're all ready to relax and put our feet up, you're in class. So you really have to love it. And that was a huge commitment. So,
It was, but it was fun. I
yeah.
know that sounds really weird, right? That sounds weird, but it was. I genuinely enjoyed being in school.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I met
So,
some great
lifelong learner.
people.
And I'm a fellow one, I would agree.
Yeah, great people. And you don't have to go to school to be a lifelong learner. You don't
Mm-hmm.
need to do that. You don't need to have the higher degree behind your name. You don't have to have those credentials to be a
Mm-hmm.
lifelong learner, right? I encourage people all the time, learn as much as you can from people. They're going to be your greatest teachers. But it was an opportunity for me. I took it, and I met some amazing folks along the way. So,
Mm-hmm.
it was worth it for me. And then I bought my husband a T-shirt that said I survived my wife's doctorate program, because he deserved it.
Well, humor is clearly something that has helped get you through as well.
It's the only thing.
I love it. So, with all of this, I have to say there is no question you are such an asset. And this has been one of the most heartwarming episodes that I personally have ever had with someone, because you, with sharing some of your personal journey and what happened with your family life, and then how that really morphed and evolved, and this community engagement, and then the continuation of your education, it's incredibly inspiring. So, I'd love to wrap up with some key takeaways that you may have for those people listening that are intrigued by what you shared. What are some of the major lessons or takeaways or things that kept you going when things got particularly challenging? Because I'm sure they have along the way.
Authenticity is key. So
Mm-hmm.
if you do not know who you are
Mm-hmm.
not going to be able to do anything for anyone else. And I think number one, as a female in this community, it can be really difficult to lean into that, because we're sort of taught to be a certain way. As parents, you are
Mm-hmm.
taught to be a certain way, right? There's a right way and there's a wrong way to do it. Figuring out your own unique way of doing it that feels right for you, feels right for your
Mm-hmm.
family, is really what's going to get you through. There were
Yeah.
so many things that you have to just let go of in
Mm-hmm.
order to make this work. And that, I think, was the biggest lesson for me. I told you earlier, I picked up my daughter from school an hour ago because she was sick. And her
Mm-hmm.
first reaction was, "But mommy, I thought you had a meeting." And I was like, "Honey, since when would a meeting come before you?" That would never happen.
Right.
Right. And like, if mom needs to, mom cancels the meeting. That's how that's going to go. And she was like, oh, yeah, that's right. You do that a lot. I do. I have no problem doing that because you know what? At the end of the day, my kids, my family, me, we're always going to come first.
Yeah.
And so authenticity is going to be key and staying true to those things that matter most to you. I would say that that would be my biggest takeaway of all of this.
Well, what a great summary and note to end on. So I cannot thank you enough for all that you do, for taking the time to be on the show today. I'm so excited to share more of what you've done with even more people and to maintain our connection and hopeful collaboration in this community that we serve. And that has been really good to us professionally. And we're trying to return that favor on a regular basis.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. So I would love actually for you to, I almost forgot, where people can find you,
oh my goodness,
learn more about the groups, community engagement, the things that you guys are doing, the book, like where should they go to stay tuned?
So we keep everything updated on social media. So if you find us at Balanced Learning Center on Facebook and on Instagram, we're there. We also have a website that is up to date. You can actually meet all of our team members there. It's just balancedlearningcenter.com. We're there. And I think that's pretty much where you're going to find us. Our contact info is there. Texts are always welcome for folks. People get really nervous about picking up the phone, and we tell them that, you know what, text messaging is okay. You can do that. So if you have questions, just feel free to reach out. And if I don't respond, just nudge me. I'm not ignoring you. And I won't get offended if you just nudge me.
It's an important disclaimer.
Yes,
awesome.
Really okay.
All of that in the show notes to make it easy for people. And I will absolutely stay tuned. I really enjoyed our time together today. Thank you.
Thanks.
If you like what you're hearing, please rate and review. This will help others find us and benefit as well. The Compassionate Climb podcast represents the opinions of Julia Napini and her guests. The information provided is intended for educational purposes only and should not be taken as legal advice. If that is what you are seeking, please consult an attorney.